These images show the power of the pharaohs of Nubia, which were females and who were ruling for a very long time. Some of these ruled for 6 or 7 generations, unbroken, female to female to female, until a male came in and then again was replaced by a female. Now, a lot of these are from the 3rd century BC, and some of them all the way till the 6th century. Now, in Egypt, queens and other royal females had big roles to play, but they would never be the pharaoh unless, you're talking about very small cases in the case of Hatshepsut and some of the others. If we look back into the history of ancient Egyptians, it seems like some of the early pharaohs, because of the link between Sudan and Egypt, were actually females too, and that somehow these two cultures, when they broke apart, one adopted the continuation of females and the other one just took the idea of matrilineal, meaning that the pharaoh, the male pharaoh, was seen as legitimate through the mother, the chief mother. What this means is that even if the male was not regal himself, in other words, he was not necessarily related to the pharaoh, the woman had to be related to the pharaoh. And this is the line that would be recorded the most. If you read the Bible, the people who are recorded are all males, showing that they're male concerned, whereas the ancient Egyptians were more concerned with the line of the females. Now, this is interesting, but what evidence do we have that the Nubians from the beginning were already practicing this female rulers? Because, of course, some of the most powerful rulers that we see that took over Egypt, they're all men, from Taharka and all of them. Well, first of all, in those kingdoms, we see co rulership between the male and their queen, that it's not a power off, power on, which means that the leadership of the females has already come in, and a lot of those queens would rule first as regents before those pharaohs got in charge. But to me, what's more interesting is the addition of female queens all over Egyptian mythology. Egyptian mythology, for some reason, is embedded or it's fused with the tales from Nubia. Every now and then you will hear about Ethiopians moving up, but you won't hear of Ethiopians the way that you would think you would hear about them. Built into the religion and the history of the ancient Egyptians is their well established knowledge of the Nubians. Okay, so they have well established knowledge of the Nubians. What does that mean? Well, that means that they are our closest evidence. If you read their books, if you read their scripts, if you read their writings about Nubian people, including these queens, there are at least 4 that I have found texts that talk about a queen of Ethiopia. The word Ethiopia didn't exist until way later, but a queen of Nubia who came and basically did their thing in Egypt. Now, why would a queen need to do this if they have a king? Well, this is because the writings of the ancient Egyptians capture the real souls of what the people believed in Nubia. They were aware. They weren't just aware of their existence, they were aware of them entirely. And to some degree, they saw Nubia as an enemy in some cases because, of course, they saw that they were going to bring a culture of, I mean, let's just say it, feminism, I guess. And they did not like that. I mean, you've seen what they've done to some of the statues when they were female pharaohs. So this person depicted here, this female warrior, and this is the difference between other places with queens. These places, these women are depicted as warriors. You will not find an image like this in Egypt. because obviously in Egypt, this is the smiting of evil which must be done by a male. This is a beautiful image depicting Queen Aso, Osiris, and Seth, and they're trying to take Seth down. Seth used Aso as a partner to try and get rid of the god Osiris before Osiris would lose and then be put together by Isis as she traveled the world looking for pieces of her body to put it together. And of course, some of these relate the story to the resurrection of Jesus, because you will hear that Osiris, like people in Egypt, are looking for the return of the god man Osiris. And this is where this story comes from. Now remember, the Book of the Dead, or the Book of Ani, is not a book. It's not like the Bible. It's not something that was put together by the ancient Egyptians. It was put together later. These are fragmentations of books which they put together to make sense, but in real life, over there and then over there and over there and over there, you will hear about this queen. So it's not written in one place, but it was taken and put into a coherent book. So even before any of these queens that have been depicted, even before any of that, we will see that the ancient Egyptians were familiar that the queens ruled the Nubian regions. Now keep in mind, this reading means that it's very, very ancient, meaning this is during the time before the birth of Egypt, or at least the early years of Egypt. He established a code of law and bade men worship the gods. Having made Egypt peaceful and flourishing, he set out to instruct the other nations of the world. During his absence, his wife Isis so well ruled the state that Typhon, Set, the evil one, could do no harm to the realm of Osiris. When Osiris came again, Typhon plotted with 72 comrades and with Aso, the queen of the Ethiopians, to slay him, and secretly got the measure of the body of Osiris, and made ready a fair chest, which was brought into his banqueting hall when Osiris was present together with other guests. By a ruse, Osiris was induced to lie down in the chest, which was immediately closed by Typhon and his fellow conspirators, who conveyed it to the Titanic mouth of the Nile. These things happened on the 17th day of the month Hathor, when Osiris was in the 28th year, either of his region or of his age. The first to know of what had happened were the Pans of Panopolis and Satyrs, who dwelt hard by Panopolis. And finally, the news was brought to Isis at Coptus, whereupon she cut off a lock of hair and put on mourning apparel. She then set out in deep grief to find her husband's body, and in the course of her wanderings she discovered that Osiris had been united with her sister Nephthys, and that Anubis, the offspring of the union, had been exposed by his mother as soon as born. Isis tracked him by the help of the dogs and bred him up to be her god and attendant. Soon after, she learned that the chest had been carried by the sea. Let's stop there because, of course, we know that the queen of Aso has already been mentioned. But not only that, she is mentioned in the capacity of a warrior, and she's also mentioned as a builder of the tomb or the casket, which Osiris is fooled by Seth to get inside. Now, there's many versions of the story, and this one does include the Queen Aso. And there's many stories of ancient Egypt where people go and meet the queens of Nubia. Now, we do have stories that sound like they are fully made up. I mean, are we going to take this to be a literal story? They talk about gods. No, but clearly there's a message here in the back, which is this is why I talk about when I say some things, even in mythology, some things are captured which are real by accident. And one of them is the fact that they used a queen. Why not a king? Why not say the king of Ethiopia? You start to notice that the king of Ethiopia is used more by the Greeks and people like that, talking about the origins of Egypt and stuff like that. But even they acknowledge that during their time, the people who were in charge were the queens. If you read the Bible, the first Christian Ethiopian came from the kingdom of the queen, who is a Kandake. There is no writing about this queen that depicts her as divine, but instead being a normal human being. And it's possible that she seduced Osiris into getting into the casket. Now, obviously, here she is depicted holding a sword and all of that. And this, while true that this definitely was the impression that the ancient Egyptians give, she seems to be a way more skillful person than just trying to attack someone straight up like this. Now, Osiris is not completely separate from Ethiopia himself, as Osiris, Ra, and some of the other gods were at least worshipped in northern Nubia. And you will see there in the beginning where it says, he established a code of laws and bade men worship the gods, having made Egypt peaceful and flourishing. He set out to instruct the other nations of the world. And in other texts, which I can't find now, he one of the nations that are highlighted is Ethiopia, and this might have been one of the reasons why Ethiopia was, and 72 other conspirators, probably from Egypt, were fine attacking the god king Osiris.